Hi, fifth graders. Welcome back and welcome to another social studies video. During this week, we will learn about cooperation and conflict between American Indians and the English settlers. Our objectives during this week are to explain causes and effects of conflicts between American Indians and European settlers, as well as to identify key groups and people involved in major conflicts between American Indians and European settlers. When the first English colonists arrived, the American Indians were generally helpful to them, especially with farming. Relations would soon change, though, as colonists began expanding farther into American Indian territory. Wars broke out, and with the introduction of gunpowder, the wars became more violent. American Indians used the land as needed. They used it for farming, and some even showed the colonists how to grow crops. They did not have a system of private land ownership. Instead, they believed that everyone could work together on the land. So you can see here the illustration on the slide shows a piece of land and there are no fences, there are no divisions. This is how American Indians kept their land. When European settlers and the American Indian leaders made agreements about a piece of land, the settlers thought that they owed the land, and the Indian groups thought that they were agreeing to only share or rent the land. By American Indian custom, land could not be sold, and this is just one of the many cultural differences that caused conflict. European settlers started creating boundaries or lines that divided areas, and this upset the American Indians because they felt or it seemed as their lands were being taken away by the English settlers, who thought that they had been gifted these pieces of land. So even without an intention for problems or an intention for war, problems always arise. And as the conflict between the colonists and the American Indians grew, distrust also began to grow among them. Disagreement over land was not the only conflict between the colonists and the American Indians. In many instances, the English wanted to rule the Indian groups. The Indians had been living in these lands for long before the settlers arrived. They had their traditions and their customs, and the English settlers wanted to come and change their way of life. So this was definitely a problem. Conflict grew between the colonists and the American Indians over land. As more settlers came, they wanted more land that was already occupied by American Indians. There were three wars between the colonists and the chief Powhatan's group. The first one ended when Pocahontas married English settler John Rolfe. You can see in the slide where there's a ceremony taking place, and we see some American Indians and we also see some English settlers. These brought peace to the two groups for a period of time, but the English settlers continued to expand into the Powhatan's territory. The second Powhatan began because of this. The settlers and the American Indians battled over these lands, and this war lasted 10 years. Then besides conflict with American Indians, there was conflict with the Puritans. The Puritans of Massachusetts fought with American Indian groups. As they spread further into Connecticut, they came into increase in conflict with the Pequots. Some colonists were killed. the governor of Massachusetts organized a large army to punish the Pequots. The Pequots attacked an English settlement and killed several colonists. The attack continued for several months with both sides winning battles. Finally, in May 1637, the Pequot War ended with the Puritans attacking and killing people of the Pequot village. The colonists sold the survivors into slavery. And remember that the English settlers had now guns. So they had, like, they were above the weapons that the American Indian groups could use. And for that reason, it was less probable for them to defeat the settlers. In 1675, the Wampanoag leader that was called Metacom began a war against the New England colonies. Metacom was called King Philip by the settlers. So these conflicts became known as the King Philip's War. The result was a defeat for Metacom in which many of his people lost their lives. Not all American Indians supported Metacom, though some of them decided to join the colonists in war. And the reason why is some American Indians decided to side with the English settlers was that they thought that if England won this war against King Philip or Metacom, then the settlers will allow them to keep their land. So that's the reason why they agreed to support English. But sadly, this didn't happen. The English settlers did win the war, but American Indians who fought on their side did not get their land back. So we're going to learn a little bit more about this topic in class. I'm glad that you're all back and we will discuss it further later. Bye guys.